Might have just have to kind of get started here because our lovely connection here is not coming up on my other page. So, okay. Oh, there it is. There it is. Lovely. And I don't want to hear myself. Okay. Voila. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Tuesday. We're winding down our week. It feels like, I don't know, like it's not a Tuesday. Okay, so today we're going to talk about ink blending. There's lots of different tools, there's lots of different techniques, there's lots of different products that you can use, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that you're going to come across. So, some of the tools that a lot of us like to use are kind of sitting in front of me here. We have an ink blending tool. These are really common. You can find them really easily, and you can get new foams for them very easily. It's a product that is found in the store, and there is two different kinds. There's the minis that are round, and then you can also get a square version, or sorry, a rectangular version. Whatever kind of floats your boat, that's the way to use it. And your foams come clean, obviously, and they have, if you get the actual ink blending tool, there's a couple of bases. You'll get two bases and then some foams, and then you can buy foam separately. And all they do is it's a Velcro surface here, and you stick the back of your foam on, and away you go, and it holds it really nicely. I like the circular ones. I just find I get less inky marks, so whatever kind of floats your boat. They also have domed foam for ink blending tools like this. Now, I don't have them, but I've heard they work really great. And those are also in the shop. Another thing to use is a brush. And of course, there is all kinds of brushes out on the market. Some of them have colored handles, some of them don't, some of them are black, some of them have, some of them have colored bristles, some of them are white. You kind of choose whatever floats your boat. I do recommend a brush with a white fiber to it because you can see your ink a lot better than something that's colored. So I do highly recommend any kind of brush that has white bristles. Hello, Teresa. So yes, I highly recommend these, and I'll show you why there's actually a difference between a blending tool with the foam and a brush with a really fine bristle. Another thing that you can find on the market is sponge daubers, and you can actually get these in a variety of different sizes. These ones just happen to be a finger dauber, so it generally fits on your finger. Makes it easy to use, but they do make larger versions of this too. Again, it depends on what you need them for. These you can't say clean with soap and water, but the brushes you can. Okay. Foams, not really. I don't recommend washing them. The brushes you could though. Okay. And one of the last tools is a brayer. Basically, this is a squishy material that is on a mechanism that allows it to roll on your surface. So you apply ink to this surface, and sometimes you have to rock it back and forth to get an even coat. And there's lots of different sizes of these ones too. Tim Holtz has some smaller babies that are only a couple inches wide, whereas this one is quite fat. I think it's probably about 4 inches. So, and they all have a pretty decent handle and are easy to use. And these ones, again, can go into your sink, a little bit of soap and water, and you can get these clean too, or you can just leave them dirty. There's a lot of artists that leave them dirty. and that's okay too. You just have to be careful about ink transfer if you are going from one color to the next. So you might want to take some kind of cloth or paper towel and just kind of ink off onto your paper towel to make sure that you've gotten rid of your ink. These will stain. It doesn't affect the use though. Okay, so lots of different things: daubers, ink blending tools with foam, and then brushes, which are the newest part of the market. And of course, there's lots of different brands. This happens to be a Catherine Pooler, and there's lots of different sizes and different colored handles. So you can get like a set that has the colors of the rainbow plus like a black. For a first timer, that's actually a good purchase, is to get ones with colored handles. And then you kind of know without looking at the bristles what ink color you're going to use. These ones are really easy to clean. You can use soap and water. You can also use a surface like a paper towel. Just go back and forth. Go a couple different directions and it will take off ink. The other thing I recommend for cleaning brushes is a microfiber cloth, because it does have a little bit of texture and will pull off some ink off that, so that you can go into a darker tone or a lighter tone of a pink in this instance, or a teal. So you don't have to have 57 brushes, one for each color of your ink. As long as you can wipe it off and you're happy with the amount of ink coming off of it, and you can transfer to another color, then you're good to go. But I do recommend maybe a rainbow set so that you've got one for each color. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about surfaces, because when it comes to ink blending, surfaces make a difference. So for instance, this is just your good old standard watercolor paper. If you've ever looked at watercolor paper, the majority of watercolor paper has a texture to it. It's not smooth. Okay, you can also get cardstocks with linen textures and things like that. So be aware of what kind of cardstock you're using in the case of ink blending. Maybe you want to use a textured cardstock because you want that textured look with your ink. Go for it. But just know that if you're looking for an easier product, go for something that has a smooth finish. There's some brand new cardstock that has gone into the shop in the last little bit. It's called Prism Studio, and we're going to use some of that cardstock today. This is Snowdrop, and it does come in a variety of different colors. And let's give this a whirl. Oh, and this is really nice, heavy cardstock. This is 110, so I'm already loving it. Okay, so I'm just going to cut myself down a smaller piece here to work on. Oop, get in there, little fella. All right. So this, of course, is a nice, smooth, bright white. So if you're wanting to make sure that you're using true ink colors, you obviously start with a white. But of course, you can ink blend over a color too. If you want an ombre look, and say you're working with reds and pinks, you could start with the pink cardstock base. And then add your layers of pink onto that. So let me see. I'm going to grab, because I have orange and pink tools here, I'm going to grab orange and orange ink. And I think that is my Distress. No, hang on. I just need to grab a party dress. Okay, let's bring in, I think that is, where are my oranges? Give me a second here. Sorry. I thought I pulled these out, but I didn't. Pretty sure. Okay. So, of course, there's different kinds of inks, too. And they all have a little bit of a different formula. So, again, you have to experiment with this kind of stuff. Okay? Yeah, so if you don't want to like, say for instance with your pink cardstock and you're doing an ombre effect, yeah, start with a pink cardstock and then work your colors up at the top. And that way it's actually a smoother blend that way because your color base is already pink. So you're already 10 steps ahead of the game. Okay, I am going to put a little adhesive on the back. And I'm going to grab a scrap of white paper. Sorry, I just moved the camera. I apologize. Okay, this just makes for easier cleanup. Okay. So, we're going to do a little bit of comparison here between the tools. So, let's actually start with our foam. I like the foams. I think they're an inexpensive way to start when you're doing your ink blending. Hang on. Because you can get a lot of foams, and you only need 1 or 2 bases because you can peel the foams off. So it's a great and economical way to start if you're a newbie. I highly recommend the Tim Holtz mini ink blenders. I like to use a sponge. So this is made of a sponge when I want a lot of ink on my surface. Okay. I want to build it fast. I find that when you have a sponge, of course, it acts like a sponge. So it's going to wick up a lot more of that ink for you. So if you're going for a big and bold and you want a lot of ink on your paper, I highly recommend going and starting with your sponge. Okay, so it goes on pretty smooth, and Distress Oxides are very well known for their blending abilities. Because they're kind of a chalky substance, they sit on the top of the paper first and foremost because they act a little differently than other kinds of ink. The Distress Oxides like to sit on top, whereas other inks tend to go and wick into the paper. So that's another thing to remember. What kind of ink are you using? What are you trying to achieve? What kind of look are you supposed to achieve? Okay, so we're going to go on to a brush version. Okay, and again, for a brush version, I like to use it in an application where I want to build my color up. So I want to start light. So the other thing too is if you want to remain light and not get any texture from this, dab a few times off and then go to your paper and start on the edge and bring it to the middle. A lot of people like that dark edge as an effect. See, what happens is if you start in the middle, I've got a brush mark. Okay? And sometimes you can get rid of it by layering ink over top of it. Sometimes you can't. So I highly recommend starting off and bringing your color over. So same from the other side. If you are trying to concentrate ink more in the center, still start off on the edge if it's all possible in your design to do so, and then concentrate that ink in that area. Because as you apply ink, you're going to have less ink on your brush, right? So, I mean, some artists don't mind the texture added from the brush. And sometimes you can use it as your advantage, too. You can put texture, make it look kind of like fluffy clouds. Again, this is all experiment. Okay? So this is fun. There's all kinds of different sponges that have different textures to them. It's based on how many like air bubbles they have in them. So for instance, this is quite an open sponge texture compared to this one. This one is quite rigid and has a lot more open cells to it, where this one is a little bit more closed. So again, between the two sponges, you're going to get a different texture. So again, try stuff out on a scrap piece of paper. You can actually use these as stampers too. So these ones are great for stenciling. If you have a stencil that is very small, like there's small details in it. For instance, let me bring in one here. This is a cute one by Photoplay. Crafting with My Nomies. It's their 6x6 heart stencil. So you can take your sponge. Say you want to do an ombre rainbow. So I can now take my sponge and just do the pink over pink in a line. And then I can come and do my spice marmalade up over top here. And you could use the little sponges for that too. The other thing with inks is that you don't want to cross-contaminate things, especially when they're two different kinds of inks. So Catherine Pooler, of course, all her inks are going to be made of the same base formula, but they definitely are a lot different than an oxide, because oxides have thicker, bigger pigments in them. They act more like a paint. Okay? So the other thing I recommend if you've got two different styles of inks is that you have different blenders for whichever ink you're going to use. So Catherine Pooler's are non-permanent dye inks. Okay? And then Ranger are water reactive dye and pigment ink fusion. So it's a combination of both. But if you use a tool for one, I highly recommend that you don't use the same tool for the other kind of ink, especially when you're going from two different kinds. Like this is a pigment cross and this one is a dye. You don't want to cross-contaminate these because you can really screw up your inks. Okay? And then if you want to, you can actually do a pad, right? Like if you want direct color, this is Orange Twist, take your pad to your paper. Now my Orange Twist apparently is not juicy. If you use your inks a lot, make sure you buy re-inkers. I highly recommend. Catherine Pooler inks have a pretty closed-celled foam ink pad. Okay? They distribute ink to your paper beautifully. I love them so much, but I highly recommend getting ink refills for those. Distress oxides. Woo! These ones blend really nicely too. Let's see. Yeah, there's lots of different tools that you can use with your inks too. Stencils. You can ink up your die cuts. That kind of thing. Sprayers, you have to have a very juicy ink to use these. So let's just, you know what? We can remove this tape. Another tool is an adhesive eraser. I highly recommend one of these. It'll just pick up that sticky, gooey mess off the back of your projects really easily. So with a brayer, I highly recommend a juicier ink. So let's see. I'm just going to grab a bunch. I think my Martini is nice and juicy. Martini, what a cute name. So with a brayer, it's round. It's a continuous surface because when you apply it, you roll it and the surface rotates, right? So you have to make sure that whatever your ink is, you have to make sure it's all the way around that roller. Okay? So you have to prep your roller, okay? And you're never going to get it perfect. But this adds some really nice texture. You can roll it back and forth, okay? And you can apply layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. So if I wanted to add, let's see, Dress Blues, And I don't really have to clean this yet, because what I'm going to do is try and load it on the other end of the brayer. Again, I'm picking it up, allowing that brayer cylinder to load. Okay. And then I'm just going to stick it down and roll it. And if you want to blend your two inks, you can roll over that centerpiece when your brayer's wet. So my Dress Blues section is a little bit wet, and you can do that. And it gives you nice smooth texture too. I mean, it's pretty good for inking it with a couple of rolls. If you want to concentrate it more, just put more ink over top of it. And of course, this is pretty darn easy to clean because it's water-based ink. So all I have to do is just take even just my sprayer, and I'm gonna pull in my beautiful and very useful microfiber cloth. I always have one of these. Actually, I always have two of these in my area. I have specific ones, specific colored ones, so that I always know when I do my laundry that those are my inky towels. For the most part, they come pretty clean. I'm actually surprised at how well they come clean. And I also put these, my stamp chamois, in the laundry. Not kidding. Yeah. And again, it's just a matter of, you can take it to the sink and add a little soap, but it did pretty good. It's a little bit of staining, but again, it's not going to come off. So, yeah, lots of fun tools. There's small itty bitty versions of these too. Like there's like a pencil version that you can get. All great tools to ink blend and have fun with and experiment with and do all kinds of fun things. So, do you guys have any questions at all that I can answer for you? Basically, just try them. If you've got a buddy or a scrappy friend, and just ask them, like, hey, can I try your brushes or your brayer? And then if you like it, go and buy it. These are all great investments as far as card making and scrapbooking, and having lots of fun. And you use them with your kids and your grandkids too. So awesome. Thanks for joining me today. If you do have any more questions at all, please feel free to put them in the comments section, but make sure you tag Alison Cope Israels, or leave a message under the Scrap and Stamp Facebook message section and just say, hey, Alison, I got a question for you. So thanks for joining me. I will hopefully see you again on Sunday for another Crafty Live. And I'll hopefully see you next Tuesday for another Technique Tuesday. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.